Hey, what's up everyone, this is MugenLord here, and today we're diving deep into a game that's been on my radar for years, and that's Final Fantasy XVI. Now before we get into the full review, I want to take y'all on a journey, because for me, Final Fantasy isn't just a franchise, it's personal. Now, I've been a fan of Final Fantasy since the SNES era, when I first got my hands on Final Fantasy VI, that game. That game changed everything for me. The storytelling, the characters, the world, it was unlike anything else back then. But it wasn't until Final Fantasy VII dropped on the PlayStation 1 that I truly became a loyal fan to the brand. That was the moment I said, yeah, this series is special to me. Of course, not every title has been without its controversy. I remember when Final Fantasy X came out, the sphere grid, voice acting, full 3D environments. It was a bold leap forward, but not everyone was on board at first. Then came Final Fantasy XII, and that's when the fan base was really starting to split. Going was the active time battle system. Now we had an MMO style combat, enemies on the map, auto attacks. It was a huge departure. Some fans embraced the change, others not so much. And then Square Enix did something even stranger with Final Fantasy XIII. They announced a full trilogy before the first game even dropped. It was confusing, it felt corporate. But I still stayed in their corner, because deep down, I was hoping that Final Fantasy would return to the magic I remember. After the roller coaster that was Final Fantasy XV, I started thinking, what would a Final Fantasy XVI even look like? Now, at the time, Final Fantasy VII Remake was around the corner, but Final Fantasy XVI was the one that had me the most curious. Every numbered Final Fantasy represents something new, bold, and ambitious. So when rumors started floating around that Naoki Yoshida, Yoshi P, was leading the next entry, I got hyped. I mean, this is the guy who saved Final Fantasy XIV and basically resurrected Square Enix reputation in the MMO space. If anyone could deliver a Final Fantasy that felt fresh but grounded, it was Yoshi P. Then it happened. We got the first reveal trailer. I had mixed feelings. The visuals, gorgeous. The return to high fantasy setting, crystals, and the medieval tone. It all felt like a throwback to his roots. Clive, the protagonist, looked cool. The tone felt serious. The world felt grounded. But what concerned me the most was the gameplay. Every action sequence focused on Clive alone. No signs of party members in combat. And the gameplay looked even more action heavy than Final Fantasy XV or Final Fantasy VII Remake. At the time, we didn't even have details, but I had a gut feeling. Is this going to be a solo character action game? Then it was confirmed. They brought on Ryota Suzuki, the battle director of Devil May Cry 5. That pretty much told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't your typical Final Fantasy. Once that dropped, the community was divided again. Just like Final Fantasy XII, just like Final Fantasy XIII, some fans were excited for the combat evolutions, others were frustrated at the abandonment of the party-based mechanics that defined the series. And then came the culture war. Trailers dropped, media narratives began to take up steam. The game was banned in the Middle Eastern countries due to the LGBTQ plus representation. Then Western media started slamming the game for being too white and lacking diversity. And here we go again. As always, the mainstream media press started interjecting politics into gaming. And if you know me, you already know how I feel about all the virtual signaling. But what should have been celebrated was a new Final Fantasy game, turned into a battleground in an online culture war. Still, I pushed all the noise aside and gave the game a chance. I bought it on launch day, played it a bit, but I just couldn't finish it right away. It took me into the summer of 2024 to finally sit down and see it through. And now, all the hype, the controversy, the speculation, I finally finished Final Fantasy XVI, and I got a lot to say. So the next part of this video, I'll be breaking down my full thoughts on the game, from combat to the story, to whether I think it's a worthy addition to the Final Fantasy legacy. Was it worth the wait, or is it where the series finally loses it for me? Stick around, so let's get right into it. Now, before I actually step into the actual review and the breakdown of Final Fantasy XVI, I want to establish something important. I had to set my expectations aside completely. As someone who grew up with the ATB systems, turn-based mechanics, and the deep RPG flexibility that defined Final Fantasy, I knew Final Fantasy XVI wasn't going to be that. This is a non-traditional entry, and I needed to judge it based on what it is and not what I want it to be. That being said, let's talk about what it really is. So for starters, Final Fantasy XVI tells a dark, politically charged story centered around the protagonist Clive Rosfield, heir to the noble house in the world of Valisthea. This is the realm powered by mother crystals and dominated by nations that control massive elemental beings known as icons, wielded by chosen hosts called dominants. Clive, passed over for the Phoenix icon, instead becomes the unwillingly host of Ifrit, a mysterious second fire icon that shatters the balance of the world and triggers a devastating personal tragedy. What follows is a journey filled with revenge, rebellion, and self-discovery as Clive battles a world consumed by blight, tyranny. The narrative explores deep themes: fate, sacrifice, oppression, and the idea of forging your own path against the will of the gods and empires. And honestly, I was hooked very early on. Now, one thing I love is the way the icons in Dominance felt like tailed beasts in Naruto. There's a similar bond between the host and power, a weight to it, and gave the summon system a mythological relevance that past Final Fantasies have yet to explore this deeply. But where this game really shines is its characters. The cast felt personal, raw, and deeply human. Some were tragic, others were irredeemable, but all of them felt alive. Example, Clive, a fantastic protagonist, emotional, conflicted, focused. Jill, her connection to Clive, her pain, her strength. I love their journey together. Joshua, the bond between two brothers hit close to home for me as an older brother myself. Their dynamic felt authentic. And of course, Sid, hands down, one of my favorite versions of Sid in the series. He's wise, witty, and full of hidden depth. And then Dion, one of the most well-written LGBTQ characters I've seen in gaming lately. Deeply tragic, emotionally grounded, and powerful. And the media barely covered him, yet he's the exact kind of representation they say they want. I wonder what that's about. And then of course the voice acting, I think is the best in the series. The voice acting in this game is top tier. Ben Starr as Clive, he crushed it. And it's a shame that he didn't walk away with an award at the Video Game Awards. And then of course Ralph Ineson as Sid, iconic. His delivery, his gravitas, it elevated every scene he was in. Unfortunately, the story started strong, but it loses steam when the main protagonist, Ultima, finally shows up. Ultima is underwhelming. His motivations felt flat, abstract, and poorly executed. The sub-antagonists were more compelling than the final villain. That momentum, it was completely gone. It's a major reason why I started losing interest midway, even though I still pushed through. Now, I know most of you guys really care the most, and that's the overall gameplay. So we're going to talk about gameplay. So as I said earlier, I approached this with an open mind. I knew this wasn't turn-based. I knew this wasn't a party-focused type of combat mechanics. But does it hold up on its own merit? You play as Clive across 3 stages of his life: teen, young adult, and middle age. But sadly, this is mostly cosmetic. There's no gameplay evolution tied to his ages of when they jump from time to time. His teen years are just a tutorial, and the rest of the game plays exactly the same. So the combat. So the controls are responsive and simple, and if you're new to action games, there's also assist rings which will automate most of your dodging and timing. Now, early combat is quite repetitive. You'll be spamming the same combos, and it gets boring really fast. During my live stream, I was already feeling the burnout in the first few hours. And then you have the icon system. Cool, but broken. Clive gains new abilities from each icon as the story progresses. You start with Garuda, then you unlock others like Ramu, Titan, etc. Now, each icon has its own skill tree and unique abilities. You can only map 2 icon kits per loadout, which expands later. But here's the issue: the combat becomes too easy too fast. Once I got Ramu, the game turned into easy mode. Drop a thunder orb, stagger the enemy, destroy them. This worked on everything, even the final boss. There's no elemental weakness systems either. No real incentive to experiment. Every attack does the same damage regardless of the enemy type. So why explore different abilities when one method just melts everything? And then of course, let's talk about the AI in this so-called party system, or lack thereof. Now, the lack of the party controls hurt this game deeply. You're always fighting with AI allies, but they're basically window dressings. No health bars, no magic, no commands. They're just there to make it look like you have a dream team or your team is putting in the effort. One of the best things about older Final Fantasy games was the party management, healing, balancing MP, issuing commands. It made you strategize and build bonds with each character. Final Fantasy XVI just takes that away. And then we definitely want to talk about the icon battles. Now, when it comes to the icon battles, and I want to forget about it, but I can't forget about it. A lot of people glaze over these segments, praising them for their cinematic flair, but let me be real with you. They are nothing more than glorified button mashing QuickTime events. It's brain dead gameplay at its finest. There's no real strategy, no intensity, just button mash your way through a flashy cutscene until the enemy's health hits a certain point, and then boom, another cutscene. It would have been fine if it was short, punchy, and satisfying, like a cool reward after beating down a powerful dominant, but that's not what we got. The worst offender was the Titan battle. It went on forever, bloated, drawn out, and completely overstated its welcome. Every time an icon fight came up, I found myself dreading it, not looking forward to it. That's not how a major set piece in Final Fantasy games should feel. It's a shame because the visuals are insane and the concept of icon versus icon has so much potential, but the execution, shallow, repetitive, and unfulfilling in my personal opinion. And then, of course, I definitely want to talk about the exploration, because I think this is another crucial part when it comes to Final Fantasy and most RPGs. This game is not a traditional Final Fantasy when it comes to level design. Instead of an open world or interconnected overworld, Final Fantasy XVI treats its maps like stages in an action game. You're presented with a world map, and as the story progresses, you unlock new areas. You can visit these zones for side quests or even replay story segments on a harder difficulty to earn a score. Let that sink in. Replay stages for a higher grade. Sounds like Devil May Cry, doesn't it? That would have been fine if this was like a spin-off title, but it's a mainline Final Fantasy, not a trial run. So yeah, I'm ranting right now. But anyway, now in terms of presentation, I'll give the game some credit here. The fields are visually stunning, sprawling environments with detailed backdrops. You're crawling with enemies and you gain XP through real-time battles. But here's the problem. The exploration is completely hollow. There's no incentive to wander off the path. You won't find anything meaningful as far as secrets or gear or any engaging world events. These maps are mostly there for grinding and fetch quests. Speaking of quests, they're bad. I know some people defend them, but let's be honest, most of them are basic MMO fetch quests. Go here, talk to this NPC, collect 3 items or so, and then you're done. There were maybe a handful of good ones, and I mean, I can count them on both my hands. As you get closer to the end game, the quest spams just ramps up. It feels like the devs were just trying to pad out the game just to inflate the runtime. And then of course you have the notorious monster hunts, are one of the better side activities. You get bounties from quest boards, then track down rare or hidden monsters across the map. Defeating them nets you specific crafting materials and solid guild rewards. But outside of that, side content feels uninspired. Now, I played it on the PS5, and technically the game ran well. Frame rate was solid, no real stutters or lag during intense moments, except during the icon battles, which dipped performance occasionally. Now, for visuals, it's fine, but honestly, I think Final Fantasy VII Remake looks better. The character models, the lighting, and the overall fidelity just feel more polished there. Well, one of the biggest disappointments was Benedicta. She was all over the game's trailers, marketed heavily as a major character, but she gets killed off just in like 5 hours of the game. It reminded me of how Capcom hyped up Lady D in Resident Evil 8, only to kill her off early. Missed opportunity, huge one. And don't get me talking about the real missed potential. Let's talk about Annabelle Roswell, Clive's and Joshua's mom. She should have been the main antagonist. She was evil, like legit evil. She hated Clive for not being the Phoenix dominant and basically made him a slave. She favored Joshua only for his power, and when she thought he died, her reaction was, oh well, I'll just make another one. My wound makes icons. And then, of course, she sold out her husband to the enemy, had a child with that enemy, and then discovered too late that Clive was the Infinite dominant all along. She ruined lives, ruined her kingdom, and what does she do at the end? She kills herself. That boiled my blood. I wanted her to suffer so bad, to face the consequences for what she did to her family and her people. Ultima as the final villain, weak, Annabelle, now that's a villain with impact, and you can tell when it's good story writing, when I'm able to actually feel that hatred for a certain character. That was kind of like what Final Fantasy VII had done when it came to Sephiroth back then, until they ruined it with the remake trilogy and the compilation. But it's very few games that can get me angry at a character, and Annabelle Rossville, she pretty much makes that list. So, and then there's the ending. Was any of this even real? Was it a story, a legend, a dream? It's one of the most convoluted endings I've seen in a Final Fantasy game. So, after I sat there, I said to myself, what the hell was that? No closure, no real payoff, just more questions than answers. So, here's the big question. Was Final Fantasy XVI worth it for me? Well, it's a mixed bag. The game is mediocre as an action title and even weaker as an RPG. Yes, it has its moments. The story early on, the voice acting, a few standout characters. But for everything it gets right, it undercuts itself somewhere else. I give it a 7 out of 10, and honestly, the story saved it for me. If not for Clive, Jill, and the cast, I probably wouldn't have finished it at all. And it took me an entire year to finish it after I found out who the real villain was. That's how I felt. That's how little I felt compelled to come back. But now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Final Fantasy XVI? Where does it rank for you among the mainline entries? Did the story carry it for you, or did the gameplay bring it down? Let's talk in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and stay locked in for more gaming reviews right here on this channel. This is MugenLord, signing off. I'll see you game fiends later. Peace out.